Earlier tonight, and I just asked a very basic question. I gave an option of 4 different Arcade Archives games, and I asked Twitter to pick which Arcade Archives game that I should play, and the winner was Frogger. So that's what we're going to do. I have played Frogger on YouTube before when I was streaming over there, and I'm going to go ahead and try and carry it over here. And just like the other Arcade Archives games, at least the more recent releases, we have several different ways to play. We have the original mode of play, which is just the arcade game for all intents and purposes. The high score mode disables a lot of extras, such as changing the number of starting lives and changing any other controller adaptations, which for Frogger really doesn't matter because you're just using the joystick. And then Caravan mode is the interesting one where you just have 5 minutes to rack up as many points as possible. We're going to go ahead first. I think we're going to just play original mode to kind of get warmed up here. And there are a couple of things I'm going to change up real quick because I've adjusted some sound that I probably should. Oh, actually, I didn't do that here. As you can see, you can change lives up to 7. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep everything pretty much at arcade level. Actually, you know what? Screw it. We'll go up to 7 because you can, and because the leaderboard really doesn't discern between that. So, screen inversion, no. So we'll just go ahead and return. Return to game. It'll ask us to reset, and off we go. Oh, the other thing I want to do is display settings because the scan lines tend to be just a little too much. Unfortunately, with Arcade Archives games, like the scan lines are never quite the way I'd like them to be, but this is pretty close. So this game, I believe, is from 1981, which would put me at 9. I didn't play this game a lot as a kid, honestly. Frogger was a game when I did play it as a kid. I played it on the Atari 2600, the Parker Brothers version, which is a little bit different and a little bit simpler. Plus, there were different gameplay modes where you could play like a kid's mode, which made it pretty easy. If I remember right, this originally was distributed by Sega, so I thought initially that this was a Sega game until it turns out that Konami was behind it all. Yep, this is from 81, so you can see how the scoring works. It is not a huge scoring game by any stretch of the imagination, so you have to be pretty smart about how you play. And there we go. And the idea of Frogger for the people who have not played this before is just to get your frog across the street. And you have to try and do it without getting the frog either flattened or drowned. Drowning the frog makes no sense, because I thought frogs could kind of swim, but whatever. You get extra points if you can get the frog to your lily pad faster. You get time bonuses. There are other bonuses you can get too, including the purple frog there, the lady frog. If you give her a ride, and where'd she go? I don't know. You can get bonus points there. You get all 5 frogs into the lily pads, and you proceed to the next level. And things just repeat, but the vehicle patterns change. And you'll also notice at the top of the screen we have an alligator right there. You can see him. And you can't land in his mouth. Kind of like Pitfall. If you ever played Pitfall, you can jump on an alligator, but you can't jump anywhere near its mouth because it will eat you. You can also see the alligator popping up on the lily pads up top, so you got to be careful as far as your timing goes. It's still early enough in the game where the alligator up top really doesn't pose much of a threat, so you just have to be rather cautious, but you can still complete this in a relatively short order. And just rinse and repeat. This is your typical 1981 arcade game. There's not a lot to it. The objective is rather simple, and the gameplay is easy to learn, but definitely difficult to master, especially once you get in here. This is stage 3, where you have some additional obstacles. One of those being that snake there, which can really ruin your day. He pops up in 2 different spots. He pops up along the road down the bottom of the screen. Oh, that's gotta hurry. And he'll pop up on that log, that long log in the middle there. You also see... Whoa! That was not smart. Dead. You also see there's a little walrus in the water who will eat your frog. So you want to not let that happen. I don't know whether there are extra lives in this game. I think you might get one for 20,000. In the arcade, I was definitely nowhere near that good. And this is just a warm-up. The star of the show will be the caravan mode that I'll play a bit later. There we go. Bingo. And stage 4 we go. I think once we get past stage 5, if I can get there, because I rarely do, that's where things kind of repeat. Whoa! You'll also notice that objects to hop on and off in this stage are pretty limited, which means that you're going to use more of your time. There we go. Oh, got it. That far left lily pad is probably the toughest to nail once you have limited spacing or limited objects to hop across. I'll just go ahead and take what the game gives me there. It's not going to work well. We'll go over here. Bam. There we go. This is a good omen. I'm actually doing pretty well here. So maybe when we get to the main attraction, which is the caravan mode, maybe I'll set a record. Kind of doubt it, because my score on this is quite decent. Oh boy, that's not good. Squish, squish goes the frog. Okay. So yeah, so this came out in 81, I was 9. That would put me... Oh! The walrus got me. I was not ready for that. And I'm dead there. Okay, gotta stop messing around. Okay, stop. Yikes. It is really easy to make mistakes in succession here. Nope. Alright, well that was fast. I went from doing pretty well to not well at all, but still got the high score there. So 81, I was 9, which would mean I was in 3rd/4th grade. Let's go ahead and go to high score mode here real quick. So I was living, that was the one time that I was living in Connecticut when I was a kid. My mom had just remarried, and my new stepfather, all of his family was down in southeastern Connecticut, a town called Norwich, which some of you may be familiar with. So we packed up from where we were living in Holyoke, Mass, and we drove down 91 and Route 2, and we got to Norwich, where I lived for a while. And that's where my interest in arcades really took off. And I've told this story before, that there were 2 places that I could play arcade games that were pretty close by to where I was living. When you walk down a hill from where I was living and you get to like a, not quite downtown, but a more populated area of town, there was a diner down there, and that diner had Pac-Man and Vanguard. And across the street, there was a bowling alley, and it's a duck pin bowling alley. And if you don't know what that is, duck pins are small versions of 10 pins. They're not quite the full-size 10 pin, and there are also different rules. It's this weird... it's this weird mix of 10-pin bowling and candlepin bowling. If you know what candlepin bowling is, chances are you're in New England here. But in there, they had a decent-sized arcade, and they had Berserk, which I've talked about before. They had Gorgar Pinball. I think they had Wizard of War in there, too, which meant that if you were in that bowling alley, you were hearing a lot of voice synthesis between those three games. And I believe that Frogger was in there too, but I never really played this game. I didn't know a lot about it, even though I believe that Frogger was part of the CBS cartoon series that had Donkey Kong and a couple of others, if I remember right. But I was never really into it. Part of it was just because it didn't look interesting to me. It didn't have like the bells and whistles that some of the other games of the time period had. Oh, that's not good. Gotta go back down. But kind of like with Galaga, I like to make that comparison. It looked too difficult. And any game that was too difficult when I didn't have a lot of allowance to play with as a kid, I never really spent the money on. I thought it would be a waste of a quarter to play a game that I wasn't going to be very good at. I was trying to protect what tokens or quarters that I could accumulate back then. So oh, that's bad. Nope. So I skipped it. I did play Galaxian. That was one of the... Gonna try it again here. That was one of the games that the Diner eventually got in. The Pac-Man and Galaxian machines were first, and then it wasn't long before I think it was the Vanguard machine, if I remember right, was replaced with Galaxian. So those were the two early arcade experiences that I had. There was another video game arcade that was in a different part of town, but it was quite a bit further to walk, and my mom was not into me taking adventures around town in 3rd and 4th grade. So I was rarely able to go unless I was with friends or something, or a friend's mom would bring me. So that was Frogger time, like 1981, 82, maybe even late 1980. The full date ranges are kind of fuzzy, but that's how I remember Frogger. I really didn't get into it until I wound up going to Fun Spot, of all places, up in New Hampshire, and I was competing in what was a Twin Galaxies sponsored event that they used to hold every year, where basically a bunch of Twin Galaxies record holders would get together and compete and try and break their records. That's where I set the 2 records that were on the books for Twin Galaxies before the company kind of did whatever it did, got involved with Billy Mitchell nonsense. But Frogger was up there, and in my quest to try and set all kinds of high scores on things for myself, I figured I would try that. I did, and I was doing okay. I would be right around where I am now, honestly, in terms of scores, which wasn't great. But with practice, I would get better. And that's really one of the things that I found about being an adult, and I've talked about this on various other Arcade Archive streams, is just being an adult and having these games at home to play at will allows you to really practice and improve your game, whereas when you're a young kid, you don't have that kind of money to mess with, because those extra credits obviously cost money. So you couldn't really get better unless you were naturally gifted. Like with track and field, I was naturally gifted at that game. I always had like that rapid button pressing ability. So for me, it wasn't difficult to learn. And the arcade that I used to go to also had its track and field machine set to not only the marathon mode, which I played when I played track and field on YouTube, but I also there was also an opportunity to earn extra lives, which was something that not all that not all track and field machines had. So I was able to really milk that. That's why track and field was always like my go-to. Oh, geez, I didn't even see that. Track and field was always my go-to when I was down to my last token. I'm like, all right, if I got to make this last, then I'm playing a game that's going to take me a while. And I could have played other games. I could have played Empire Strikes Back, for example, where I could hold my own for a fair amount of time, or if later on, when I was really good at Dragon's Lair, I could play that and 1cc it because I had all of the screens memorized. But Track and Field was a game that I could just play pretty much not even thinking about it, rack up high scores until I was bored, and then walk away. But the interesting thing about Track and Field, and I had talked about this on stream, was that the Twin Galaxies method of record keeping for Track and Field never allowed for the marathon mode. You could only play through each event once. So you had to try and maximize your score through all of those events. Whoa, that was close. And it was difficult to get the scores that were required for that kind of record. I think I got somewhere in like the top 20, maybe the top 10. And again, this is before... Oops, dead. Darn it. Gotta try it again. And this is before Twin Galaxies kind of took a digger when Walter Day separated himself and things went south. And now, of course, to have this version at home that I can play at will and improve my scores on, it would help tremendously. If I was to go back to an arcade and play it, provided the cabinet is in good shape, the joystick is in good shape, I can probably get 10 to 13,000 easily, as long as I'm paying attention. And that's the same story with Galaga. When I played Galaga as a kid, and I played Galaga mostly at a campground at a rec hall. Back then, I could never play for very long. I would always lose my life pretty quickly, or my lives pretty quickly, because I never understood the ins and outs of the game, and it wasn't until Namco Museum Volume 1, I believe, might be Volume 3, I forget which one it is, but when Galaga was openly available for play, and it was an emulation, it wasn't a facsimile, or it was, but I mean, it was reasonably close to the arcade version, that I started to get better. I started to practice more frequently, because I was shooting for my own personal high scores, and my skill improved. And then I really started to get good at it when I was working at a theme restaurant in the mid-2000s called Kahunaville, which sadly closed. I used to be a DJ there, and even before I DJ'd there, I used to go to karaoke events. I think it was Tuesday nights, and their arcade was open during that, because again, it was a theme restaurant, so all that stuff like rarely closed. And they actually had the fire speed set to turbo, so the game moved to the bullets moved faster, and that's when I was able to roll the game over for the first time. I played it all the way through until I scored 1,000,000 points. I actually had a crowd for that. That was a pretty cool night, honestly. And from there, I just, I got better. and I would play whenever I would go to an arcade that would have it, and that was the end of the story, really. When the games came out for PS2 and then for the Xbox 360, I would always default to those. I would always play them. Darn it! I keep trying to backdoor that, and it's not going to work. But Frogger's been one of those late bloomer games for sure. Man, this is so slow. That wasn't smart. Whoa. Oh, how did I miss that? That's alright. Not going to get the high score this time, but that's okay. Oh, I got it. In Arcade Archives, this series has done a pretty nice job of bringing these games back to prominence. I mean, we had okay ports of this for like the Super Nintendo and the Genesis and things, but having a pretty close experience to the arcade like this really just makes it even more worth playing for me. And this has really become my go-to for Arcade Archives when I feel like booting something up. Especially the that's too bad. Especially the caravan mode, because you have only so much time. Let's do it one more time. Here we go. What else is going on here? I'm pretty close to pre-ordering a game called Maneater for the Xbox One, or maybe the PS4. I haven't decided which yet, because it doesn't look like Maneater is Xbox One X enhanced, so I don't know which is going to be the better version of it. But it looks like such a silly game that it's hard for me not to want it, especially right now. It's basically kind of what Jaws Unleashed wanted to be for the PS2 and the Xbox. It's this crazy eat the humans and cause all kinds of destruction kind of game. Almost reminds me a little bit of the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction, I think it's called, from Radical Entertainment. It's that same general idea. So I'm reasonably close to doing that. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, again, because I'm doing some research in terms of what the better version would be. Plus, I'm considering streaming it for Twitch here if the PS4 version is decent, because I'm running an old PS4 here. So while these Arcade Archives games are running fine, some of the more recent stuff may not do so. Still very close to pre-ordering the Tony Hawk remake. Super close to doing that. Part of me wants to go physical on that, but part of me is just, I really don't care. I'll go ahead and I'll get the digital and I'll get access to the warehouse level and things. I'm super excited about that game coming out. I have some reservations in terms of how it's going to turn out. We've seen remakes already of late kind of be questionable. But Vicarious Visions, the development house that's doing the remaster, they have Tony Hawk experience. I actually showed Twitter a picture of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 for the original PlayStation. Yes, there was a version of it for that, and they did a really nice job with that. Now, granted, the staff is going to be different than it was back then, but I'm willing to give the team a chance and see how it goes. But the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I have so much history with that, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is still fantastic. So I'm game. You know, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. This is not good. I'm almost out of time. Oh. Those are the two games on the immediate horizon for me. I also have Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, or whatever Nintendo's calling it. I have that on pre-order, and that's going to be arriving hopefully on launch day or soon after. So I definitely have stuff to keep me busy. My school year ends June 12th, so the end of the school year is definitely on the horizon. It's ending about 10 days early, which I kind of wasn't expecting. But I'm not completely sad about that, especially the way the school year has been. While I'm going to miss working with the kids and everything, like, this year has just been so not satisfying considering everything that's going on. And then, you know, I have to see what's going to happen with my job, which will be interesting. Pretty much every state in the country is going to be slashing their education budgets. And where I am on the seniority list, it's not looking good. So, definitely nervous about what's going to happen there. What kind of job I'm going to be able to find if I'm not in education anymore, which kind of sucks, because I basically changed my, you know, I changed the course that I was pursuing in life to go after education, and now who knows when that's going to be even close to normal again. So, you can't, I mean, it's unproductive to be angry at a virus, but I'm angry at a virus right now. Because it's a really bad setup. And you're talking about a guy in me who's pushing 50, who hasn't done anything but education for the last 5 years. So I really don't have any transferable skills. And until I finish my degree, I'm going back to school. You know, until I finish my degree, I really don't have a lot of prospects. So I'm a little nervous. I guess more than a little nervous. I did post a teaser on Twitter that I got an email today from a certain somebody, and it looks like, provided everything goes the way that I think it's going to go, that I'm going to be back to writing video game reviews again very soon. It is for the same person that I worked with. Whoops! But I set a high score. Look at that. It is for a person that I worked with 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The console is obviously going to be different because we did Super Nintendo last time. But I got the information today. I'm going to go back to the title screen here. I got the information today, and it looks like it's definitely going to happen. And now it's just a matter of getting my act together and being ready to start working on the book. I'll be doing a lot of the same stuff that I was doing when I worked on the Super Nintendo book, which is going to be primarily sports games. That's pretty much my forte. And maybe a few other things depending on what I get assigned to do. Work will start probably over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Oh boy, that's not good. Let's start it again. And it's going to take a year, or I want to say it's going to take a little longer than that. I want to say it's going to take about 14 months for everybody to get done. And let's do that again. But yeah, it's I didn't expect it. I remember when I talked to the project manager about the possibility of this, I had some questions, and then the questions were never answered, and I thought, okay, I don't know when or if this is going to happen. And then in the last week, I got some communication, but it was still pretty vague. And then today we got like the deadlines, and we got the games list that people are going to be submitting for, and some of the other specifics. So it's happening, and it's exciting stuff. It's for a console that I am not as familiar with. I don't want to give anything away just yet because I don't know whether an official announcement has been made. But I'm going to be back in the saddle. It'll be interesting to see how this works out, given the different things that are going on in my life right now. When I was first working on the Super Nintendo book, I had just taken a full-time job after working as a per diem substitute, so that was different. I was doing social media work for Retro World Expo, which I'm still kind of doing, although the show obviously is up in the air for reasons that you can probably figure out. Now I'm going to be going back to school, and my job situation is changing, so I can never catch a break when it comes to working on one of these projects. Something is always, like, amiss. I guess it wouldn't be working on a project like this if there wasn't something that was kind of screwed up. So that's happening, and just trying to figure out the technical specifics will be something that I'll be doing over the next few weeks, and kind of just getting myself ready and in order. So that's exciting stuff. I did mention in the last stream. How did that happen? I mentioned in the last. Well, all right, let's do this again. I mentioned in the last stream that my living situation is going to be changing, and I got some more news on that today. Darn it, I screwed up. The apartment that I had been looking at to move into is open. That's not really an issue now. So now it's just a question of resolving things here, and whether I'm leaving this living situation in good order. The place that I'm looking at is a little bit smaller in terms of overall space. So things that I had thought about for my retro gaming collection in terms of giving that its own room probably isn't going to happen. So it'll be like sharing part of the dining room or something. I haven't really mapped out how that's going to work. But it looks like I'm going to have more space. As I mentioned, I've been in this house living with family for almost 9 years. And I live like in the upstairs part of the house, and there's 2 rooms and a half bathroom. And when you have as many games as I've collected especially over the last 5 to 6 years, my former retro gaming space is just buried in games, and it's not a problem that I regret having. I'm certainly happy to have that problem, but just trying to find room for it all has been problematic. So moving into any larger space is going to be helpful. And I've taken one step closer to at least a bigger place, and that probably will be happening over the summer, regardless of what happens with the job situation. So I'm excited about that. That'll be something else that I would be working on over the summer. I can't believe I did it again. Oh, darn it. So we'll have to see what happens with that. So yeah, things are not calm, even though you'd think they would be, all things considered. Me not being like an essential worker or anything like that, I don't leave the house much. Although I did leave today to get some things from curbside pickup from my local Walmart, which was good. Man, the line today at that Walmart that I went to, the Walmart I went to was in Chicopee, Mass. And they had 100 people out there today. That's no exaggeration. That was pretty crazy to see. So people are still looking to get their stuff. I theorize that... Alright, we gotta do this again. I theorize that Perhaps some SNAP or food stamp benefits were deposited today, so that explains like some of the lines. But yeah, it was definitely crazy. All right, let's do it again. This is what Caravan will do. You have to make that perfect run, and if you don't, whoops, I don't care about the online rankings. If you don't make the perfect run, then forget it. You might as well just start again. So if you make a mistake, you have to restart. There we go. The family member that owns the house is coming back from Florida on Wednesday, so I'm going to be in self-quarantine for 2 weeks. So I won't be leaving the upstairs part of the house for 2 weeks' time. That will be interesting. And then after that, obviously making plans for what will be happening over the summer will be happening. In terms of a stream schedule, I'm still trying to work one out. Usually I tend to stream pretty late. First of all, because I'm busy during the day. And I also tend to like take naps and stuff in the afternoon. So I'm a weird like night owl. And I know that's not good for East Coasters who might be watching streams, but that's just what I've always worked under. Like when I film unsealed videos, those are usually after midnight. Those are usually like 1, 2 in the morning. Sometimes a little bit earlier than that, but that's usually when I'm filming. That's just when creatively I'm better. And I can't believe I did that again. But I am working on putting something a bit more consistent together, and I'm certainly not shooting for a Twitch partnership or anything. This is all just fun for me to do. But I think it would just be better for everybody if they were interested in watching if I was doing this more consistently rather than just kind of doing it when I feel like, which is what I've been doing of late. Like, oh, I feel like streaming, so I'm just going to do it now. And you're not going to get very many viewers who don't have some kind of advanced notice and can work that into their routine. So why did that happen again? But that's the plan there. I do have an unsealed video that I'll be putting together this week. I showed off on Twitter something that I got in the mail today. 2 things that I got in the mail today. The one that I'm really excited about, and I talked about getting this game on past streams. I got a 1992 copy of PGA Tour Golf 2 for the Genesis. Came in from Quebec. Came in today. Came in pretty good shape. Certainly not any worse for wear than what was promised on eBay. And I'm excited to open that because I have history with that game, and it's good history. And I don't want to give anything away. I'm not going to give any spoilers away. I have talked about it in past unsealed videos, and I've talked golf, but that is definitely coming. So I'm excited about that. I also... Oh, I can't believe I did that. I also have a Greatest Hits copy of Ridge Racer that I had also been talking about. That's going to be happening for the PlayStation 25th anniversary show. I want to have at least one launch game or launch period game that's from... let me try that again. I want to have one game to open up from that launch window, and it's a game that... It is the game that made me buy a PlayStation. And if you've watched Unsealed episodes before, you'll know the game I'm talking about. So that will be... I'm obviously gunning for September 9th to premiere that, but who knows what scheduling is going to look like by then. But those 2 things are in the works. One game that I'm considering opening for this week Just as kind of a preview is a game called Devil Kings, which is very much like a Dynasty Warriors type game, but instead of ancient China, this deals with ancient Japan. So the characters are a little bit different. It also has a much more comedic approach to it. It's a little bit over the top. We know it better now as Sengoku Basara here in the U.S., a game that I missed terribly from when I had a PS3. That was one of the things when I parted with my PS3 to get the PS4 that I missed a lot. So this was before the name change in the US. That's what they called it for the PS2. It runs pretty well. I have a copy of the game already, but it'll be nice to have a brand new copy to use. So that is where I'm leaning for this week's episode. In June, at like the middle of June, the PGA Tour is supposed to resume play. And that's when I'm going to be opening PGA Tour Golf 2, and I have one or two other PGA Tour games I'm going to open for that extravaganza, kind of welcoming live sports back. I can't believe I did that. I'm excited about that. And I might as well just start again. Nice job. So that's what's on the horizon as far as the show. So I still have lots of ideas. I still have some content or some games to open. Even though the show may be winding down a little bit in terms of games to open. One of the things that I'm sad about with Retro World Expo being in peril this year is that that's where I was going to be trying to get some more sealed games to replenish my supply. Gotta do it again. But if the show doesn't happen, it's going to make things pretty difficult. So we will see. I don't have any information on that, by the way. I don't make those calls. That's all up to the show organizers to figure out. I can tell you that as of my last communication with show management, it's still scheduled to go on, but I don't know any specifics. I'm pretty hands off as far as social media stuff. I work the Twitter account, which doesn't have a great following, and I pretty much post what I'm asked to. So I really don't have a lot of inside information like I've had in years past, and part of that's just because I haven't had the time to be big on the show. And the guy that they have running social media for them now is a lot more gifted than me. I had the enthusiasm. I still love the show very much and have thought that it was very important to have. But he has the Photoshop talent, and he knows how to do all these templates and make things happen artistically that I could never do. I really kind of fudged my way through and relied more on just enthusiasm to get people interested. And he does a much better job with that and is getting compensated as such. So that's a good thing. But as a result of that, I really don't have a lot to go on in terms of what's going to be happening with the show. I haven't heard a lot of detail. I'm going to finish a run here, I promise. But that's the sad thing for me, is that I was really counting on that show this year to replenish my supply of sealed games, because they have declined. And part of that's my fault, and I've talked about this before too, is that when I open stuff, I tend to sometimes make like long episodes where I open multiple games at once, and I probably could have expanded the show or extended its run had I just opened stuff one at a time. But, you know, I didn't do that, and as a result, the supply of games has dwindled. And the other problem that the show has is that a lot of the games that I have opened, the ones that are left are sports-oriented, and not everyone is big on the sports thing like I am. So the future of the show is, you know, the immediate future is okay, but the long-term future of the show is definitely kind of in doubt. Sealed game prices have gone up. And the other thing is, I've done over 100 episodes. I think I'm close to 150 now. So I've opened up 150 of these things. and obviously more than that because some of the episodes have been 2, 3, even 4 games at a time. But the price of sealed games has been going up, and my ability to spend money on those games isn't what it was. And of course, especially with the job situation being in flux and with me having to spend money on going back to school, that level of dedication that I've had and I've loved to have over the last 2+ years is going to be less. So we will see what happens. That doesn't mean that I'll stop making episodes of something. I certainly do have ideas, and if I want it moving into the new place, gosh darn it, if I want it moving into the new place or when, just trying to figure out where I'm going to be filming and what it's going to look like is going to take a little bit of time. But I have some ideas of things that I want to put together. And one of those is to build on the repeat idea of just reminiscing, talking just about personal experiences and taking out the unwrapping piece. While that is what stood out over the last 2 years, I certainly don't have to do that. And a few of my teaching colleagues have even commented that while it's a cool idea, it also seems kind of unnecessary, because if I'm just talking about my experiences with those games, it's not necessary to spend money on new copies when I can just open or show off the ones that I already have. So I don't know. We'll have to kind of see how that goes. Obviously, a lot's going to depend on what happens with the new place. Alright. Full concentration. Okay. This is the problem with caravan mode. Caravan mode, like, makes me act before I think, because I'm worried about the time on the clock. And as a result, like, I make a lot of mistakes. And as soon as you make one mistake when you're timed, you're dead. Like, you can't get that time back, because those are precious seconds that are lost waiting to respawn. So I wind up restarting. Like, you need to make the perfect run, and if you don't, you gotta start from scratch. And as you can see, I'm 10th out of 100, so I'm in the top 10%, if you do math. And the difference between 10th and 9th is negotiable. I can get there, but I have to be smart about it. Here we go. Okay. See, if I actually focus and concentrate, I'm actually scoring a little bit better. And I'm not losing lives. I got, what, 3.5 minutes left. One of the gripes I've had with the caravan mode has been the fact that the timer doesn't pause when the level turns over, so you lose valuable seconds there, which kind of sucks. But it's the same for everybody, so griping about it really does nobody any good. There we go. I'll take off the extra seconds to get 200 extra points. We'll leave that middle one open. Here we go. Now we're doing okay, but of course, this is the part that takes more time because there are fewer ways to jump across, as you can see here. Okay. Ah. Okay, all right. This is like pulling teeth. Okay. Nope. Go all the way across. Nope. Ah, I can't believe I did that. 15,000 on the nose. Keep trying. I mean, this looks easy, doesn't it? And the premise is very simple. Just get across the street, or get across the pond. But it's tends to be more complicated than that because there's pattern recognition involved, there's timing involved, and I almost screwed myself there for no reason at all. And I'm losing valuable time. This is seriously what goes through my head when I play this game. Like, it's funny, when I used to go to arcades, like, I actually did talk to myself a lot, and I do it here at home constantly. And most of it's degrading talk. Like, I give myself a hard time because I make mistakes. Call myself an idiot and stupid and all these other things. Because it just, I get irritated with myself because I know that I can play better. But in arcades, I definitely got some interesting looks from people. Like, what's wrong with that kid? And it looked worse because I walked around with these headphones on and I really wasn't paying attention to anything or anyone. So it was just, it looked suspect. Or as the kids call it these days, it looked sus. But yeah, I mean, arcade's serious business for me back then, I'll tell you that. And of course it was serious because I only had X amount of money to work with, so I didn't want to waste my tokens, so if I made mistakes in arcades, like, I was not happy. Now, I didn't beat on arcade machines or anything, it was never my MO, but I definitely, I muttered things, and I even remember, like, shouting, like, dummy, like, once or twice. Whoa! Because I was so invested. Now it's a lot different. I mean, how many times have I reset this and tried again? I probably spent like $5 in quarters on this stream alone. At least. That's not what I wanted to do. But I can do that. Back in 1980-something, when I was getting like $2 or $3 a week to spend in arcades, like, that was lifeline money. I was like, alright, I'm not messing around with this. And especially if it was a game that I was good at, if I was making mistakes, I was not happy. Like that. Alright, I don't know how I did that. Oh, and I gotta back away from the seal or whatever that is there. We'll probably do one more try after this, and then that'll probably do it for the stream, as we've hit our hour almost. I will do another one, maybe even tomorrow night. And we'll see how the rest of the week goes. Yeah, ooh, I'm close. I gotta wait for Snake Guy to... get past. Okay, now I'm really paying attention. Oh, man. Oh, that's perfect. Whoop, that's all right. 17,750. That was 180 points better. Maybe that's where I should leave it then. There we go. So I'll still be in 10th. Don't know who got 26,000 in 5 minutes. That's insane. And just as a recap, the Arcade Archive series available on both PS4 and Switch. The games usually go for $7.99. They're great. The Switch has some different games than the PS4 has, and consequently the PS4 has some different games than the Switch has. The PS4, for example, I don't know whether the Switch has Crazy Climber yet, but the PS4 is both Crazy Climber games. I've been playing those a little bit and have not fared so well. Whereas the Switch just got a game called Radical Radial, which is this weird shooter / racer that's reminds me a little bit of Bump and Jump, but not really. And that's a game I would definitely check out for $8. That game is pretty interesting. And of course, you got the Nintendo games like Versus Excitebike and Donkey Kong and things like that on the Switch. So you really can't go wrong with either. If I showed you my Switch dashboard, like almost all of the games are arcade archives across the board. And if I showed you my PS4, and because I put them on the same page for the show, like the first 8 of the first 10 slots that come up from left to right are arcade archives. It's funny, here I am playing PS4 and Switch, all these advanced consoles, and I'm playing these games from the 80s that cost $0.25 to play and don't have the fanciest graphics or anything, but I guess that's kind of the way that it works out. So, I'm going to check one thing here real quick. I have not been checking, I've not been checking my Twitch dashboard. So if you left comments there and not here, sorry about that, although I think they would show here, but I don't know. But this is where I'm going to do streams from now on, and I'm going to keep YouTube specifically for Unsealed and for repeat episodes and things. I do have another... let's try the high score mode one more time. Talk me into it. So let's do it one more time. So we need 18,030 points. And I'll try and pay attention instead of yapping and see if I can actually do well here. Alright. One thing I don't like about any of these emulations, and I don't know if any of you have played this and have noticed it, is if you have to hop back, if you have to hop down because you're trying to catch a lady frog, or if you realize that you need to move because of timing, like the down never works well. I don't know if that's an issue with the ROM, or because I don't think it's the PS4 controller. This is brand new, my Goku controller. So I'm not sure, but I've noticed that on the Switch version and this one, so it seems to be something across the board. Maybe it's something that Hamster Corpse emulation just has been doing. But it definitely can make things hairy if you have to jump back down. It's alright. For those of you who own Xbox Ones, it's worth drawing your attention that the SNK anniversary 40th anniversary collection is on sale this week. It is very well done. Digital Eclipse did a really nice job with the museum and learning some other aspects of SNK gaming. I do recommend it. That is a collection that I tripled down on. I have the special collector's edition for the Switch, the one that comes with the music CD and such. And then I have the PS4 and the Xbox One versions digitally. The Xbox One version also has NES Baseball Stars, which the other versions do not. So if you like baseball, that is the way to go. A lot of people speak highly of Baseball Stars. I am unfortunately not one of them. I tend to favor Bad News Baseball and RBI Baseball over Baseball Stars, but you can't deny that the game has appeal for sure. And it looks great in high def. Digital Eclipse did a good job with carrying that over. So I think it's $19.99, and you get a lot of games in that collection, plus the museum aspect where you learn a lot about the game development cycles and some early artwork and things. So check that out if you have some extra money in your Xbox One bank this week. Or you can use the money to get Maneater, which is coming this week. And again, like I talked about earlier in the show, that's one to keep an eye on. I am very excited for that. Every so often you need just a silly sandbox game that is just over-the-top dumb. And as I mentioned, I really think that it's almost like a spiritual successor of sorts to games like Incredible Hulk, Ultimate Destruction, where you just destroy everything. And I think that it's like a better version of Jaws Unleashed. I'll be curious to see how it performs technical-wise. It doesn't look like it has the biggest of budgets, so we'll have to see on that. Alright. I need 2,000 points without making a mistake. And that was almost it. Oh, come on. I'll take the last one here and just get out of the way. Nope. Alright, we'll do it one more time. This is the kind of game it is. Like, Frogger now is just addicting, and there's no reason that it should be more addicting now in 2020 than it was in 1981, but here we are. I can't stop playing Frogger. Someone hook me up with the Frogger hotline. Hi, my name is Pete, and I'm addicted to Frogger. Hi, Pete. Alright. So far, so good. I'll take that. Do I have any strategies for this game? Not really, other than practice. Practice is really essential for a game like this. Learning the timing, learning what your approach is going to be, understanding what each level brings in terms of challenges, understanding how different things react. All of those are important to scoring well. I don't have like anything immediate that would bring better success, except slowing down, which I'm not really doing, or I haven't been doing because I've been worried about time. I do recommend that if it's possible to get this leftmost lily pad full, that you try and do that sooner, because the timing for that tends to be more difficult than it needs to be. Obviously, in terms of scoring, you want to try and get the lady frogs if you can. The purple frog there gets you 200 bonus points. Also, on every odd-numbered stage, and this is one of them, you see the purple flies there. Try and get that. That's another 200 points. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get both the fly and a lady frog home, so that's 400 extra bonus points, which definitely comes in handy. But the other thing that I would recommend is just don't make mistakes, especially in the high score mode here, because you get only so many lives to work with. And in the later stages, once you get to stages 4 and 5, like, you don't have much room for error at all. Like, I already have to retreat and restart. There we go. Like, if I was playing timed right now, I'd be in big trouble. Alright, gotta hurry, gotta hurry, gotta hurry. There we go. Whoa! That was completely fortunate. Something I also recommend, too, if you're looking for a strategy, that was dumb, is to keep the middle lily pad open until you absolutely have to use it. The reason for that is because the middle one is usually the easiest to get to. Usually. Not always. There we go. Alright, I'm in kind of okay shape. I'm about 2,000 away. Here on stage 5, like, you can't always... Oh, boy, that's bad. You can't always be, selective, and I screwed myself again. Alright, one more time. One more time. I'm getting closer. And I really should apply some of the things that I do in caravan mode to here to get extra bonus points. Like, if you see the pattern that I take in that first run... Oh, and I totally got lucky there. Getting those extra flies can really be a big help when you're talking about high score runs, because if you can score well early, you open yourself up for, you know, it makes things easier in later stages if you're losing lives. There we go. Like, 4690 is pretty good for a first stage run. Usually I'm between 43 and 4400, so that's almost 300 points better. And some of that has to do with how much time it takes to get across the board, too. And again, one of my strategies, I like to start on the left when I can, because those tend to be the toughest slots to fill. On the second and fourth stages, on the even-numbered ones, you also have to worry about alligators filling the lily pads, and you can't jump in there when the alligator's there or you're dead. But you can still get the lady frogs for 200 points apiece. It's a value proposition, though, whether you want to wait around for one of those or whether you want to go for the time bonuses, which is what I tend to do. One of the big issues, or one of the big reasons I do that as well, just because I tend to run fast. Because I react fast and I want to keep moving, which isn't the best strategy, but time bonuses just work better for me. Now, as you can see, I'm going in, like, reverse order. I probably should not have done that. I probably should have, well, never mind. Oh, that's going to be good if I can get there. Oh! I could not jump fast enough. Alright. Nope. So now I gotta jump back down. I know. There we go. 6 seconds left. That's cutting it close. With some practice, you should be able to get here. I think that, like, stage 4 is probably a good barometer of skill. So, getting to stage 2 as a beginner is about right. Darn it. Stage 3 would be, like, would be intermediate. And then stage 4 and stage 5, definitely expert level stuff. Just because of the timing involved, the intricacy of the traffic pattern, and also just learning the timing in terms of jumping across things up top. You do get used to how everything is positioned. And as you can see, I'm just going to go all the way to the right here. That way I have a pretty clear path to the top. The problem with that strategy, however, is that you don't always get the patterns you want, or the entry path you want, because you have such a limited product or a limited ways to move up top. And then stage 5 is just, it is the worst. Like, stage 5, you almost have to take what the game gives you. Two, three, and there are 4 cars. Oh, I was dead. I was so dead. Alright. 1, 2, 3. Ah, too many times. 17,260. I don't know. One more time? One more time. One more time. We're an hour in. Why not? One more time. Alright, let's try it again. I was already off kilter when I started. Man, I'll tell you what. Teenage me would have loved the fact that you could play a game at will like this. This would be the equivalent of going into an arcade and having your favorite games on free play. Even when you had birthday parties as a kid, like, you didn't have games on free play. You got a certain number of tokens you could use. And once those tokens ran out, that was pretty much it. So having these arcade games basically on free play like this is just, it's crazy. If 9-year-old me saw what 48-year-old me is able to do now, he would have lost his mind. It's just crazy how far technology has come. And that's one of the cool parts about being an old man, is realizing where we were and seeing where we were. You can read about it. You can say, "Oh man, and dude, back then it must have been crazy. They had to go to arcades, and you look at how the Atari 2600 games look, and you're like, that's all they had." But to us, like, playing Frogger on the 2600 is just, wow, we have something close to the arcade game at home. This is awesome. Yeah, I hate to use the term perspective, but it's really what you need. And you can't get it. You can interview people who have been there and talk to them about what they saw, but if you haven't actually been there yourself and seen and understand what things were like back then, it is just so difficult to understand it, to really understand it. And that is not at all to say that if you weren't around back then that you're not able to talk about it, or that you can't, have some basic understanding. But I mean, I was there. I remember how things were. I remember how full arcades used to be, and man, they were full. Like, you had to squeeze in for certain games depending on what they were. And it was a great time. I mean, arcades were just fantastic places to hang out. There were really good players there, so you could learn just by watching. I talked in my last stream when I did 10-Yard Fight, I talked about how that's how I learned to play that game, was by watching someone else play it. One of the things I used to do in arcades all the time was when there weren't people playing, I would watch attract screens. I am also guilty of rummaging my fingers through the coin return slots to see whether there were any tokens lying around that I might be able to scrounge up. But, arcades were just fantastic. And the thing about arcades that it's tough for people to understand is that seeing arcade games in the form that they are today, where they're just like they were back then, and you can play these on your phone. Like, first of all, cell phones, the idea of carrying a phone with you is still just science fiction stuff. But being able to carry cell phones that can play arcade games that are really close to the original, I mean, come on, that's just no way. Like, if you told me that in, like, 1985, I would have thought you were crazy. And the other cool thing, too, is just seeing how far gaming has come. Seeing how far the technology has advanced. And seeing the jumps between console generations. I wrote on Twitter about this not too long ago, where I was talking about the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and what I thought of those. Darn it, I keep making that mistake. Man, I did it to myself again. I was there, and then I got stuck. We'll just keep going. Why not? You guys don't mind a little bonus coverage, do you? And I talked about the fact that the jump in technology, the jump in graphics, just it can't be what it was in generations past. There's no way. I remember first of all, when we moved from the Super Nintendo to the 32-bit era, that was really the first one that stuck out to me, honestly. Seeing things in full 3D, seeing games with all these polygons that the Super Nintendo had tried with the Super FX chip, and it did okay, but it wasn't quite what we were looking for. The frame rate was bad, and it looked crude. It was certainly cool in 1993, but once we saw the 32-bit systems in action, it was a big deal. It was a big step. And then in the following generation with the PS2 and the Dreamcast and the Xbox and GameCube, I mean, it was such a leap. Not only were the graphics more detailed and the textures more lifelike, and I can't believe I did that. Let's do this again. But it was futuristic. Moving from the crazy frame rate, like the 30 frames per second or less that we had on the Nintendo 64. All right. In the the PlayStation to 60 frames per second on a PlayStation 2 or a GameCube or an Xbox was just insane. The games just look so much better. And then when we went to the next generation after that, we're into the high definition era, and while frame rates kind of declined, the resolution was sharper. So if you had the right TV, it looks fantastic. But after that, the PlayStation 4, I upgraded, sure, but there was nothing out there that really, really impressed me. There have been some things that have shown flashes of brilliance, but it was like almost diminishing returns in a way. I don't know that we're going to see that level of jump that we saw in generations past. Now, those of you who are younger, who haven't been there for all of those, I don't think that it's going to affect you as much as it does to an old-timer like me. All right, stop. But we'll see. I'm on the fence about an Xbox One Series X. I really am. Backwards compatibility is going to have a lot to do with that, and pricing, obviously, whether I'm able to actually get one based on my job situation when they come out. But yeah, I'm intrigued. Why not? There are certain things I'm worried about, like hard drive space and these mandatory game installs that take forever, but it is what it is. It'll be interesting to watch the generation unfold for sure. But man, if backwards compatibility between all of the Xbox consoles is what Microsoft has hinted at in the past, oh man, I'm all over that. I don't see how they can do it because of licensing rights and things. I have my suspicions, but we'll see. I'm trying to be optimistic, which when you're an old man, it's hard to do. It's one of the things I've not liked very much about getting older, is I am so cynical about everything. I never used to be this way. Honestly, like if you had known me when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was not this guy. I was someone completely different. I was excited about everything. It was easy for me to get excited about things. When the Dreamcast came out, and I've told the story on Unsealed before, I dropped $800. I was excited. I was eager to play. The only thing that made me upset was that I was working for FuncoLand at the time, and I had to work on launch day. I worked a midnight launch, and then I had to be back in the store at 9 o'clock the next morning. So I got to play my new Dreamcast console for all of like a half an hour in between then. But I was excited for that. And I think the cynicism really started... The cynicism really started when the Dreamcast plug got pulled. Oh, man. I don't like to talk about that very much. I do, but it just... I remember, and I read that... I read it on the GameSpot message boards, if you remember when Ziff Davis ran those. That used to be like one of my hangouts. And I remember seeing this thread, Dreamcast is done. And I'm like, that can't be right, can it? And then I started to see the rumor pop up elsewhere. And I'm just like, alright, this is really happening. So I, in a fit of rage, and I remember I was sick still. I had been out of work for almost a week. I didn't have pneumonia, but I had, it was bad, whatever it was. I had been to the doctor, which was already a sign that I wasn't feeling great because I never go to the doctor for anything. So even as weak as I was, I threw all my Dreamcast stuff in a bag, and I brought it down to the used game store that I always went to, called Fantasy Realms in West Springfield, Mass. And I was friends with the owner, so I walked in. It was like an hour after he opened, and I had this. I looked like Santa Claus minus the white beard, and I asked him. I said, "Do you have any PS2s in stock?" And this was in January 2001. If you were around back then, you know that at that point, PlayStation 2 hardware was still really tough to come by. So he had one left. And I said, "That's mine. I'm buying it." And I put the bag on the counter and I said, "I'm trading all of this in." It was all of my Dreamcast stuff. My system, my controllers, all of my games, my VMUs, like the whole 9 yards. I was done. I was done with Sega at that point. I was so, like, insanely upset that I had put all my faith and all my money into Sega and they were killing the console. So I used the money that I got from that, and I got the PS2 and some games, and I don't want to talk too much about that because that's going to be the subject of my PlayStation 2 launch extravaganza for Unsealed a little bit later this year. But that's when my cynicism like really started. Like, how could the company do that to me, even though it's irrational, and the company didn't do it to me? It's not like it said, you know, "Oh man, that Pete Scarrett guy, we're gonna screw him." You know, it's not what they thought at all. But you know, I was not even 30. I was still in my 20s, and life was kind of weird at that point anyway. And I made a snap decision. Is it a decision that I regret? You know, it's funny. I used to think so. I used to think it was a bad move. And now that I'm a bit older and I realize what my financial limitations were, I probably wouldn't have gotten a PS2 for another year after if I hadn't have done that. I got such an insane deal for my Dreamcast stuff that, you know, I wouldn't have been able to get all the stuff that I got. So it made sense at the time. Yeah, sure, it was driven out of spite, but it worked out in the end. I do remember when I got my PS2 home that night, and at the time I was using my GX TV as my main TV. I didn't have like a big screen TV at the time, so you know, I hooked it up to the GX, and I remember that the first thing that came to mind with the PS2 is that the sucker was loud, especially when reading those blue-backed CD-ROM discs. And I'm like, what is that all about? And then I remember trying the backwards compatibility aspect, and I recognized that there were some graphics glitches that I hadn't noticed. And I'm like, oh, why? But a lot of that faded pretty quick. Especially with all the games that I had got. Why did that happen? So that's that memory. I miss that game store. I miss that game store terribly. That was such a cool place to hang out. I loved the owner. The owner did so many cool things, and I'm not going to make it. Oh, maybe I will. It's going to be close. There we go. I mean, we had a radio show that the owner had paid time at a local AM station to do like it was an advertisement. It was basically a talk show. And, you know, he funded that, and that was awesome. You know, we had Street Fighter Alpha 3 sessions after the store would close. We would all hang out and play against each other. He had partitions set up where he would let people rent time on different consoles. And I always thought that was neat. It was actually sometimes better than going to an arcade where you could just kind of pick out what you wanted to play and play it for as long as you wanted, as long as you like re-up the time. I loved that aspect of it. I got to work for him for a time, and that was a cool time in my life. Although I was coming off of a low point in my life at that point, but being able to work in a video game store again after having worked at Funcoland and then having left, that was really exciting. And working at this guy's store was like a video game fan's dream come true, because he was the biggest store in the local area. There were 2 stores at the time. There was Fantasy Realms, which had multiple locations, and there was Video Game Castle. Video Game Castle, by the way, is still around. Ralph's awesome. At least I hope they're going to be still around after this virus thing. But working at Fantasy Realms was like, I always would ask if there were positions open, and it would always be, no, we're full up, and we have enough people, and so I kind of given up on that dream until like 2002, when there was a position open and he brought me on board. And working in a video game store like that, where you didn't have to worry about selling like membership cards or cleaning kits or any of that other nonsense, was such a awesome thing. There were some things that were difficult about it, like you had to look. We didn't have a point of sale system, so you had to look at the trade values on like a binder, or sometimes you had to call the owner to find out. And the owner was the type, he was a great person, so he would work deals with certain people that he knew. So, oh wow, I was lucky. So that made the job difficult sometimes. It was never overly difficult to the point where like you never wanted to go to work. I mean, it was really awesome. Unfortunately, the business kind of tailspinned a little bit. The owner had some personal issues go on, and I wound up leaving. But that was one of the coolest jobs that I ever had. I've actually, with some exceptions, my time in video game retail was largely positive. Working for GameStop kind of dulled some of that, but that's the chain's fault. It's not the industry's problem. Because I've played video games so long and they've been such a big part of my life, like working in a video game store just made sense. I would always have perspective to offer, and if parents or people had questions about games, I'd always be able to answer them. Working for Funcoland was great, just because the way the chain did business while they were still corporate, there was still like a gaming atmosphere, and some of their corporate decisions I thought were really good ones, but I just got burned out. Because working gaming retail and during a holiday season as a manager can be really stressful, as I'm sure you could imagine. And working in any kind of corporate store when you're dealing with things like reconciling inventory and other challenges it was a lot to handle. So I wound up leaving that job after, it was kind of like a meteoric, and I know that's the wrong term to use because meteors don't rise, but it was a pretty quick rise to management for me. I started as an assistant manager in '98, and I had to kiss a lot of butt to get that job, and I don't regret it for a minute. Oh, that is unfortunate. But I did so well. Nope, not gonna happen. That I was promoted to manager in training in like 6 months. And of course, while I should have said no, I didn't. Yeah, sure, no, let's go. I'm ready. And that was a mistake. because I was never really ready for that. I had never done things like hiring staff, and I delayed so long in hiring staff that I was so far behind and overwhelmed that I was just taking whoever I could find, and that's never good. And I had a certain way of doing things. Like, I didn't trust anyone to do things the way that I wanted to do them, so I wound up spending all of my time in the store, which was never good. And then... shoot. And then we had issues with inventory missing, and it was all just... it was all too much. Just gonna take a mint here, because I've been talking for an hour and a half. So I wound up leaving there after a year and a half total, and I wound up doing something else. I got out of gaming retail altogether until getting that job at Fantasy Realms in like 2002. And then that fell apart, and I was back at gaming retail at a GameStop store, which was a Babbage's before then. I take that back. I worked at Game Crazy first, and that was one of the shortest gigs I ever had, because the regional manager was not very good. And there were a lot of things that were unclear, and I was never really trained well, and I never really felt comfortable in the job. And so I said, no, I'm not doing this. So I worked there for a while. That was 2004. That was, I remember when I was working there, games like Soul Calibur 2 had come out. Simpsons Hit and Run had come out. I can't believe I did that. Futurama had come out, which is now, like, ridiculously expensive. It's kind of funny to look at the value on that game now and remember, you know, this game was crap when we originally played it. I remember the Game Crazy store manager, he was a big fan of the show, so he would play it on, like, one of the store's systems, and we'd kind of watch. I never really had a lot of interest in it myself, but whatever made him happy. And then I wound up, like I said, I wound up working for that GameStop in 2005, but that was short-lived because the store manager there was having issues of his own that I really didn't want to be a part of. So then I was out of gaming retail again until 2010, when I was living in Arizona, and I was back at GameStop at that point. Man. Oh boy. And then the last... that's done. I'm going to keep going though, whatever. And then my last GameStop tour of duty was in 2015, when I worked at a store at Enfield, Connecticut for a while. And that was when, in between semesters of college, when I was having financial aid issues and I needed a job. So I applied and I got brought on as a key holder. So I've had several tours of duty. I probably, when all is said and done, see, a year and a half, and then like a half a year, so that's 2 years. 2 years and 3 months, so like 2 and a quarter. And then I worked a year and a half. So 3 3/4. So more than 4 years of gaming retail experience, all told. You know, Funko Land and Fantasy Realms were easily my favorites, but some of the GameStop time was okay. Man, GameStop could have been something. I think that with a different strategy, and especially a different customer service strategy, they really could have been special. I mean, they had the inventory, they had the store space, they had the, they had the presence. Had they just focused on gaming culture instead of corporate nonsense and shoving things down customers' throats and this whole nonsense of opening new games and things. I mean, there's no reason with games so popular as they've been, especially in the 7th generation of consoles, that they couldn't still be doing okay for themselves. Even in an era where they're up against digital distribution, which has been slowly choking them out. You know, when I used to post on NeoGAF, one of the questions often was, what could you do, or what would you do to fix GameStop? And, I always used to have very specific answers as to what I would do, how I would approach customer service. But I'm no executive. And the idea had been bandied around. Why don't you open up your own game store? And yeah, no. There's no money in that. That is a money sink, and that's something you do because you love it. I know people who still own game stores. I know Ralph, the guy who owns Fantasy Realms. Chris Crone, who put together Retro Games Plus. I know these guys, and they are, they're great business people, but, they put in a lot of hours, and there's a lot of investment in terms of not only time, but money. And at my age, like, I'm not doing that. If there was one that opened up now that, had a chance, I'd love to do that, even as like a side hustle. But I would never open my own, even though I have my own ways that I would love to do business. I do think that there is a market for for more retro game stores. I think that the success of mini game systems like the Super Nintendo Mini and the Sega Genesis Mini, the Super Nintendo Mini, the upcoming TurboGrafx Mini. I mean, there's enough success there where I think if you can get the product, I can't believe I did that, that you can be successful. I did it again. But you have to be, you have to have a vision. You have to not only be selling the product, but you have to be selling to the culture of people who are interested. Like game tournaments, I think, would be a big thing. And not just Smash. Holding, trade events where you bring people to... And Retro Games Plus has been doing this for a while. Where you let people come in on their own time after the store is closed, and you use it just as a place for people to gather and do buy, sell, trade. I think that that's great for community building. I don't want to do that. Go back. Pricing may be something that I'd have to look at, because I tend to... Because I don't know how good with pricing I would be. I'm much more of a person that wants to see a game that someone wants go to a good home. So I wouldn't be good at, sticking with certain pricing. I know a lot of people in my local community that are really good with that. They don't, they don't overcharge, but they don't, they're not gonna, they're not gonna let you short shift them either. And I could not be that guy. I remember, darn it, when I was selling manuals in a few games at Retro World Expo a few years ago. I was practically giving away the NES manuals that I had, and I could have received decent amounts of money for those, but I wanted them to go to good homes as long as I was getting something for them, because I was using the money that year to replace my Dreamcast, and I needed to have that money. So I was willing to let that stuff go, and I really didn't care about book value or eBay value or whatever. But I'm not good at looking that stuff up. Or, I shouldn't say I'm not good at it, but I don't have any interest in doing that kind of research. So I'm not really a good seller. But yeah, I mean, if someone else opened a video game store around here that was like brand new, trying to get off the ground, and they were looking for somebody to come in and put some hours in to try and take some pressure off the owner, heck, I'd even do it just for games, not even for pay. I'd work toward getting a system or something. Do it on like the barter system. That was fortunate. That was fast. Of course, there are other, like, in arcade is another thing I'd like to see more of. We actually had some, well, I don't want to say had, but local or casinos that were pretty close to my house in southeastern Connecticut. Each of them have like multiple arcades inside, which are fun to visit and have a lot of the older arcade games as well as some new ones. And I'd love to see more of those like around here instead of having to travel all the way down there. That's another thing that I think could be successful if done right. Of course, doing it right is the trick. There we go. The issue in one of those arcades is a Top Golf arcade. If you ever heard of those, like a Top Golf, it's like a golf simulation place. The issue that I have with the arcades there is that they use like LCD screens or you know, high def screens instead of CRTs, which for arcade games don't necessarily work the best. There's one arcade that I sometimes went to at a casino that had a Galaga machine that ran on one of those HD kind of sets, and the input lag was so bad that doing challenging stages, darn it, was almost impossible. Or if you were trying to get a captured ship back, like you'd be late. Alright, let's try it again. So that was kind of annoying, but they did have another one that had the original CRT, and that was fun. That's the one that I would always default to when I would go down there, even though the controller was a bit wonky. I was fine with that, because at least it was close to the original experience. I'm very fortunate that my GX TV still works, because that's a CRT, so I'm not playing any of my retro games on a high-def set, which is good, because I wouldn't want to. There was a time that when I had my PS2 and my Wii back in 2009, 2010, I was trying to play those on high def sets, and it's no good. It looks washed out and blurred, and you know, even if I had the component cable or the composite cable, component cables, I'm sorry, I don't think that they look very good because they just weren't built for that, I don't think. And I could do some things, like I know that some people do like RGB and some other tech stuff that I don't understand. But for me, darn it, for me it's just like emulation versus playing the real thing. Like, I could just dump all of my cartridges and just go emulation only. Or I could put my cartridges into storage and just go emulation only, rather than playing the actual thing. But it's just something about playing the original games on the original hardware, using the original controllers. I've always felt that way. I'll certainly use emulation when it's appropriate. You know, like when I was working on the guidebook a couple of years ago, but it's not my preference. If I have the ability to play the games on the original hardware, then that's what I want to do. Because I think that that's just closer to the original experience, and I am definitely an experience guy. I am not... I'm more an experience guy than a convenience guy. I remember things being a certain way, and again, that's chalked up to my old age, but can't teach an old dog new tricks, I guess is the simplest way to put it. So even playing games that are emulated reasonably well, like on the 3DS Virtual Console, for example, you know, it's serviceable, it does what it's supposed to do, but I notice things like the volume not being right, or certain things about the visuals not being right, like too dark, or whatever the case may be, and it always drives me nuts. I did it again. No, I'm just gonna go all the way over here. Whoa, that wasn't a smart thing to do. Oh man, what a, all right. Oh, wait, almost 2 hours in? This stream is just going to be terrible because it's so interrupted, but I should probably just let these games play out. Of course, it's no worse than this segmented train of thought. I keep jumping all over different topics. I get to stay up late and play tonight because I don't have to work tomorrow. I have tomorrow off. The school that I work at, the schedule obviously is different with everything that's going on. So the classes that I offer teacher support in, they hold their classes on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and like an optional Friday session. So Tuesdays are like an additional day off for me. So Monday nights after my early day, where I have to start at 8:30, like, I can set aside time on a Monday night to stream without an issue. If I was actually going to the school building like usual, then I probably wouldn't be doing this because I'd probably be in bed by now. So this does grant me a little bit more latitude, even though I'd much rather be teaching in the building and things to be somewhat normal. But having said that, it's not all bad. If it allows me more time to play video games and to stream and to get caught up in social media and things, then, you know, I certainly have more that I could complain about. Alright, let's focus here. Get that one out of the way. There we go. I sure would love Hamster to come out with a collection of these. Hamster Corp is the company that publishes these Arcade Archives games. I'd love them to come out with a compilation so that I could switch back and forth. Again, I'm using the native streaming functionality of the PS4, and I have my PS4 camera here, so I'm not able to freely switch between games without cutting the stream off. So if I'm going to be streaming, I have to focus on one game, unless I'm playing something like a compilation like the Genesis Collection, where I can shift back and forth between games. But I'd definitely love to do that, because at some point, like after 2 hours, like playing the same game well, I'm okay with it. It probably gets bored for some viewers, especially if I'm hopping back and forth, no pun intended, between my topics and between games stopping and starting. There's no flow to it. It's not like playing a narrative game where you have a flow to what you're doing. And it's not a speed run, although it kind of is. Now, alright. Lose one life, that's fine. I can probably deal with that. Okay. Do that. Alright. I'm not going to get that one, but it's okay. Here we go, that's not bad. So, games that I'm considering streaming later on this week. I've already done 10-Yard Fight, so that's done for now. And obviously Frogger is done. I'm not going to do another one of these for a bit. Karate Champ is one that I want to do. I did on YouTube a few times, and I enjoy playing that. It's another game that I have some personal significance with. Mat Mania I want to get back to, which is a wrestling game, which is it's my favorite wrestling game of all time. Even though it's not licensed and it's a little bit hokey, it's another one that I have personal connection to. So that's one I want to revisit. Double Dragon, I'd like to be able to play that one, and I would play that to completion because you can put as many quarters in as you want. So that's one that I want to get to. And there'll be some others. I'd like to get to the Genesis Ultimate Collection. I have pre-order in for Streets of Rage 4 for the PS4 for the retail version. It's not coming from Limited Run, by the way. It's coming from a different company. So that's what I'm waiting on to do, like my Streets of Rage special, where I'll do the Streets of Rage games one at a time. That's just going to take a little bit of time. I want to wait for those games to arrive. So those are all on the horizon. I have a lot of those that I can get to. I haven't done a pinball stream in a while. I'd like to do one of those. I know that running pinball streams on Twitch is a little more forgiving. So that's something that will come. And I have like Star Wars Racer Revenge is a game that I'd like to revisit. Especially when Star Wars Episode 1 Racer comes, I'd like to be able to kind of compare notes between those two games. I actually like Racer Revenge better myself. So I'd like to kind of examine why I like that better and see maybe if you agree. So all right, so that's a thing that that I have in the works. So I have plenty of stuff to stream from. It's just kind of picking what I want to do or what I'm in the mood to do at the time. That's why I went to Twitter this time, just to ask them or to get a sense of what they wanted me to play, and here we are. And I love doing streams just because it's free thinking for me. Even though my trains of thought are so scattered, like it's cool to just kind of get them out in the open. And because a lot of the stuff I talk about is just experience stuff, it's cool just to kind of share them with everybody. And streams are really the best way to do that. I like to compare it to like stream of consciousness. It's as thoughts come into my head, I kind of just get them out. So that's why I love doing these, even though I am not the best at any of these games, really. It's more just an opportunity to reflect on my personal experiences with them and why they have personal significance, if at all. So that's the general idea. I know that the format's kind of bad, and I know that because I keep starting over, like I said, there's no pace, and I get that. Although when I did the track and field stream on YouTube, when I was scoring pretty well, that was much more concentrated. That was a game I was in the zone for a while. But as usual, when you're not playing the actual arcade cabinet and PlayStation 4 controller buttons aren't really built for constant abuse when I'm rapidly tapping, and I was running out of steam late, that was eventually going to end, and it did. And even a game like Map Mania, there's no real reason to restart, because even though it's score-based, like, you're not going to, in most cases, you're not going to die early, or you're not going to get pinned after the first match or two, so it doesn't make sense to just give up and restart. That's why I'm thinking I'm going to go that route for the next stream. I haven't done Map Mania in a while, so that makes sense for me to do. There we go. Another mint. Come on, Snake. Ah. I think this might be it. Let me see what I can make happen. For those of you that did come to check out the stream, I really do appreciate it. I haven't uploaded any of the archives to YouTube yet. I know I probably should do that to see if there are more views, but I think for now, I'm just having fun doing what I'm doing. So I do think Map Mania will be next. It could be as soon as tomorrow night. If not tomorrow night, then probably Wednesday night. Which would be my first night of quarantine. Darn it. So that'll probably be the next one. I have a bunch of other Arcade Archives games that I can get to and some other things, so we'll definitely do that. In the meantime, look for a new episode of Unsealed a little bit later this week. I do think it's going to be Devil Kings that we will do that night, although that's certainly subject to change if I decide to do something different. And that's it. So thanks very much for watching, you guys. I really do appreciate it. I hope you had as much fun watching and listening to me ramble on as I had about regaling these tales for you and playing these games with you. And until the next time, take care of yourselves and each other, my friends, and I will see you later.